So this is the mapped and programmed hyperbolic spiral programmed M51 outer reaches in reverse play. Reverse play being the notable element, since this is reverse play to show the historical formations of the present array of stars, and particularly in the areas of what would have been the lower right hand quadrant of the rectangle with the original image in, the star groupings that are now approaching the top of the screen in anti-clockwise fashion, because the film is in, or the model is in reverse mode. It's playing in reverse, going back in time. And now at the top of the screen appears to be some kind of perturbation gathering of what I have termed blast arcs in my understanding, because there will be several of these blast arcs dotted all over the galaxy, and some of them will take up a symmetry at times, become circular. Here we see now the perturbation taking on a track of what appears to be outwardly blasted remnants of debris, or of objects masses leaving the galactic plane, the visible galactic plane at that area. And we see it's not just a coincidence, because it continues on inwards. The point of the video being that these perturbations, if indeed they are as described, then they cannot form if the galaxy were in fact moving in the direction shown by the model at the present, which I am calling reverse. But you can see now some perturbations, some blast arcs rather, which are perturbations. The important parts in this model are in fact the bits that aren't there. So these blast arcs are important to me, because when they become symmetrical, that seems to be close to, or relative at least, to one another, to the time when they were actually formed. So it may well be possible from that standpoint to actually map the events as they took place in the chronological order of development of M51. All of the mass and data that's going in now towards the center would not necessarily be there, because the way, here we go, we've gone back to the beginning in reverse mode again. The masses mapped and modeled in this way would not necessarily show all of those masses gathering toward the core, because obviously masses during explosions and later collisions in the mid or outer reaches of the plane form debris and mass, and therefore stars that weren't there before the event took place. So, but my model takes back all mass to the beginning of the to the initial development from the core area, which is not correct, because not all masses obviously would be generated at that point. However, what it still maintains, this model still maintains these, you can see a lot of them now on the screen in the lower section, these circular blast arcs. When they take up the circular symmetry, they are soon distorted by the hyperbolic development, where inner radii are moving more quickly, or appear to be moving more quickly. They distort more quickly, but they're not moving more quickly. They're simply covering the same ground, but a smaller radius appears to travel faster along its perimeter, a mass along its perimeter. So here we come again to more grouping of some symmetrical circular activity, circular emptiness. The black holers won't like that, because these are the true black holes in my model, but they're not black holes immediately visible in the in the M51. This is with all the mist and all seemingly non-prominent stars removed, so that's why we can see these things more clearly. Here is the perturbation. I'm going to set it in forward motion in a moment. I don't know if this camera will pick up this development at all, but we'll see. Okay, I don't think we need to go back to the core. Just to mention that perturbation could have begun, the event that caused those perturbations could have begun about here, and now we also see some more circular blast arcs developing in reverse, or at least deforming from the circular, and one or two. And they are maintained despite all of the masses coming with it. There shouldn't be half or 2/3 of the masses that are shown here should not be there, because they were formed by blasts later in the development. They hadn't happened yet in forward time at this point. So even at the very early beginnings of the emittances, you can see on the outer ring now some perturbations that have remained throughout. Because they are less disturbed, they have come from the very outer reaches of the galaxy. Now I'm going to run it forwards from that point as it should be done. So we'll take this out of this mode, view, toggle full screen, view, toggle full screen. Take it back to its beginning at 900. That's a good point to start. We can see gaps. Nevertheless, they're quantized, as my model is very much quantized. As you can see, they are rings of data, and they are programmed to be on hyperbolic development, just as a hyperbolic spiral would take mass, or rather mass would travel along a hyperbolic spiral. So in these circular representations, every one of these masses is following its own hyperbolic spiral development. In distant view, the gaps are the important things to me. How they're maintained and the symmetry of them can give me clues to both their origin and, well, obviously their origin and their time frame in relation to the chronology of the galaxy. Right, let's start it off in forward mode. And you can see that these spaces travel round as expected. They almost look like ball bearings traveling along a spiral chute or something. But here are the original ones, and they will distort into imperceptible. Although split into two, they could have happened later, so it could have been two events joining, but I don't think so. You will see the development. Oh, let's get a bit closer. See, there's another one. There are gaps that have been maintained right back through from data input stage, which is today effectively, or our contemporary time, back the millions and millions of years, to points like this. And some of these developments may well be coincidental, but you can see the patternation in it, meaning that these are signifying events. Here we go with the perturbation, the one I'm interested in, that for me proves the correct rotation and the correct spiral format of orbit, hyperbolic. This data could not be put in. This data was put in contemporary terms. So this is today's data being put in on a map of today's galaxy, and only found to exist when the model is reversed through playback toward the core, in the way, incidentally, that I believe many mainstream cosmologists view galaxies, as to go in towards the center and to be for masses thereon to be swallowed by the black hole, which is swallowing light as well, apparently. But none of that exists in my observations, and no reactive traces of any such thing exists. In fact, quite the opposite. The masses are coming outward, and any black holes are just this little physical emptiness where a blast has taken place, outward from the center of any blast or collision event. Now we're going to approach data input stage. You can see the shape of the triangle, of the rectangle taking form, and that's because this perimeter, as indicated by the cursor arrow, this perimeter is merely the extent of any data at all. So the data will be in a rectangular format because it's taken from the image directly. And I will hold it on, if I can, when this I don't know if you can see the number. No, you can't. I don't think you can see the numbers at the bottom. It's a frame count, and I'm on 2,950, and I've got to go to 3,200 for the data input point, which is the contemporary image. We shall now stand by to pause it at 3,000. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, out. Oh, bang on, 3,200. And then bring up the opacity of the image so that you can see that lost it again, bring it back. When the eye come close to the balance of my model versus you can see that in the lower right-hand quadrant here, I've highlighted every piece of light I can find, and I've given it its coloration if it needed it. I haven't missed a trick here. I've included what could be galaxies as viewed through this galactic plane in the far distance, just in case, as there seems to be some evidence in my observations to suggest, just in case what appears to be galactic formation within the galaxy is not overlooked. Which means that, of course, this ends up as extraneous data when put in reverse motion back towards the core. This is extraneous data because it also wouldn't be there, just as collisional debris that happened, say here, at this point, as it was developing, would not exist when the model was reversed so as to depict it in the core area. It would have disappeared in true reverse mode at this point where it was created, and only the remnants outward of that point would be viewable. And this is what we have here. So the interesting factor is for me that this area, which looks pretty, pardon the expression, nebulous, there's nothing particularly outstandingly patterned about it, although there are. When it moves, you can start to see the residual development. It's not until it's placed in motion, and I'm going to play it backwards again and kill the opacity of the no longer relevant image. Well, although it does, you can see that it does travel along the proposed spiral, but this is a confusing one on the M51. This is not, I believe that the two events that took place here from the early beginnings of the galaxy, beginnings of these emissions when they were first ejected, has been tied up with another event which is gravitated to the same spiral development, which I think happened around here somewhere, and it caused this one. But it also fits that the original debris would be about at these positions as well. So the original debris would be here, and this other event may well be here, but it happens to fit over the hyperbolic developmental spiral very nicely. So let me kill the opacity of this now and go once more to pause on the perturbation patterning. This is absent of data. That's more the reason why there's little there. It's because that's where the very bright extraneous galaxy appears to be, and you can't discern from the brightness of it any dots of light, so it's blank. That's the only absence in that groupage of the right-hand side of the rectangle, which this is now, as you can see, taking up weird shapes, as is these tails. The focuses in the foci in them are correct, though, even though overly quantized at this point, giving rings of tree rings of development. Here we go. Here's the perturbation reappearing. It's difficult to ascertain exactly when it took place, but with more research, that can be figured because these shapes are high fidelity. They maintain faithfulness to events that must have taken place. Because by virtue of the fact they appear from the random a selection of, or random collection of data in the rectangle. So that event could have taken place here. And there are also fairly symmetrically circular blast arcs in that area, as there are hundreds of them in effect throughout the development of the model, but they appear as symmetrical and then distort as naturally expected. But they reappear, others reappear in different places. Not reappear, but others appear in other parts of the galaxy in what could well be a chronological order if it's modeled correctly. Once more then, back to the put it in reverse. This is now forward motion. I must make it clear, because there's a strong draw with the black hole for people to believe that mass must be traveling inwards towards it. And therefore, whatever, all these arms are trailing and everything's just a trail of stuff going down the drain of the black hole. Well, this model, I think, is very compelling evidence to show that it does not go inward at all. And these shapes cannot be made from random stellar nebulae at opposing ends of the galaxy and brought together in an inward spiral. It cannot, I don't think nature, that's the realm of fantasy. But the other way round is exactly what happens. Now we see to the left-hand side of the screen, moving in a bit, this area, something's happened. It's shot outward. It's perturbed at a higher velocity than the general constant velocity of the torsion field, and it's still maintaining what would be expected of this symmetry. And yet, when it fully develops, I can take it to its, I think I'll stop it and take it to its, when it's fully developed, it's random. It looks completely random. And you won't find much data between those stars. I think I've picked up everything. So I haven't invented data either. I haven't added anything, and I haven't subtracted anything. It is what is there, and when you reverse it, it forms the pattern over here in tighter circular fashion. What caused it? So it has been caused already. This is causal. This is if the effect. I beg your pardon. It's not causal. They're quite the opposite. It's the effect of the reaction to an event that took place further back in the development, which would be back going anti-clockwise, because this development is clockwise. We can actually, if I just do. Put that to 3600, if I can see my keys through the camera. 3600. We can actually just go forward to 3600 and follow the development. And it would be rare now for any circular symmetrical blast arcs to be formed. Any that are formed now will be purely coincidental and they will be rare because no such event is now taking place, because this is a dead area in terms of development. There are no more events taking place. It is just a furtherance of the existing events as they were from the original picture of today. If I can hold this on 3600, I will. 8, 9, off. 3600, that was good. Here we see the rectangle distorted in the way, again, hyperbolic development would distort the perimeter of such a picture made of stars. But will be now difficult to find any circular blast arc developments because no events have taken place between the final frame of the last shot, which was 3200, and which was the data input stage, where we took the image from. And since then, no events have taken place to actually give us residues of circular or new circular blast arc activity. All we're getting now is the development of stars that have already been blasted in some way. Some of them have collided, some of them may have self-exploded, however it happens. And so now this again is proof that we're on the right track by using purely existing data. I think let's put it back to where it should be, which is 3200. 3200. Where's 3200? 123 200. Enter. There we go. And put the image back so as you can see. All data came from that point. And on the full image with no stars, it looks very empty and bare, and you can see galaxies that may well be from the far distance and viewed through the extended galactic plane. But every item on there is highlighted from what is there. It is not invented. That's it from me.